I really wanted to start this episode with a funny joke and throwing some shade and being edgy, but I don't know if that's my vibe. Today, I just want to talk about training. Yeah, training is hard. Training isn't going to be easy, and I think that's great. So, a little backstory on me: I really hate working out. Well, let me rephrase that. I grew up not having a positive relationship with the act of training. I really loved going to the batting cages and spending an hour and a half in the batting cages. I really loved going out and doing long toss. I thought it was really fun to do footwork drills and all those things. But when you go into the weight room, it was intimidating. It hurt. Did not enjoy the way that my quads and hamstrings felt after squatting. And I just really avoided a lot of those things most of my life. Little fun story. I remember being a freshman in high school, and the backup quarterback for our JV team looked over at me and saw me for like the third set in a row, dodging, jumping on the bench. And I was getting outbenched by a handful of defensive backs and receivers. And he walked over and he was like, "Are you even here to lift?" And I was like, "Bro, like, why are you calling me out?" And it took me a long time to learn that really uncomfortable feeling of being sore and that really uncomfortable feeling of being uncomfortable in the moment, it's such a great thing in the long run. It pays off in such an amazing way. I really envy the people that come into my gym like this morning and see bundles of burpees and go, "Oh yes, I love burpees." And I'm like, that's awesome. I love that for you. But I want to talk more so to the people that aren't in that space. I want to talk to the people that gravitate more towards the bougie fitness. And that's kind of me. I want to talk to the people that if it were a long-term fitness solution to sit in the dry sauna for 20, 30 minutes and then rinse off and go get in the jacuzzi and then go and do a nice like swim in the pool or an ice bath and then go get a smoothie, and you do that 4 times a week and 6 months later you have abs. Like, if that's the dream for you, I feel you, because that's the dream for me too. Like, that would be amazing. It's just not reality. What I've learned in the last 13 years or so is that the suffering is good. And if you can learn to embrace it, and if you can learn to hit it in appropriate doses, then the long-term impact is so amazing. So let's talk about it from an emotional standpoint. If you come in and you do a hard workout, I like to tell our athletes at the end of class, like, I hope this was the most challenging thing about your day. Or I'll say, like, man, this is going to be the hardest thing you do today. And that's like my prayer for you today, is that this would be the hardest thing you do. And truly, if you think about it from an emotional standpoint, if we get into a situation where we're constantly approaching something really difficult, constantly approaching something that makes us breathe heavy and kind of gets us like panicked a little bit and the walls start closing in, and we can navigate through that, especially in our gym and in like CrossFit affiliates and functional fitness gyms and stuff, where the modality changes, where sometimes you're counting your reps, sometimes you're looking at a 4-time situation, sometimes we're counting your effort, but where you have to think, then you really train your body to, in high stress situations, you train your mind in high stress situations to take a beat and focus and be task oriented. So then when you find yourself in a high stress situation in an interpersonal relationship, you can navigate that. You have the reps to do it. And I know that might sound silly, like, what does 21-15-9 of thrusters and pull-ups have to do with I'm getting in an argument with my significant other and I can stay calm? But if you truly think about it, if you can stay calm in that situation where you're at a high stress situation physically and emotionally, and you're having to count and all those things, then there's some skill transfer there. But let's talk about it from a physical standpoint as well. I know that one of my favorite things is when I talk to people about what I do, and they're like, "You own a gym? Yeah. What kind of gym do you own?" And then I tell them, and they're like, "Oh, it's because you want to confuse the body. You always want the body confused, right? Like the body never knows what it's doing, and that's why you guys can do so many cool things, and that's why your members see good results." And I'm like, yeah, for sure. We were trying to confuse the body. Like that's it. Like we are trying to Rubik's cube our body every day. It's no, it's not it. We're looking at metabolic conditioning. We're looking at different stimuluses. We're looking at different ways to condition our body and ways to get responses. If you want to break it down into the nitty gritty science, aspect of it and the biology of it, I would just encourage you to look at aerobic and anaerobic conditioning and look at what happens to lipids that are stored and different types of training modalities and different types of intensities. Look at like the creatine phosphate system and all these things. And if you're listening or watching and you're like, what is he talking about? That's not where we're going today. Just simply put, you need to know that physical adaptation, physical change comes from stress, right? It comes from getting the body outside of its comfort zone. And so if we're constantly just doing things that are really, really low impact, well, I think that's good. Well, I think that's fantastic to go on 15, 30 or hour-long walks or go on long bike rides and things like that. I do things like that myself all the time. Well, I think that that's so important for circulation and for your cardiovascular health. If you're looking at increasing things like our older athletes, I'm going to shout out to Vince if you're listening, but if you're looking at people that are 50 plus, and I'm going to talk about Vince specifically right now, but when Vince joined, he was, I want to say he was 55, and his concern was losing bone density and losing muscle mass as he aged. And he was doing a lot of research into what that looked like. And he's like, and Vince is a pilot and a Marine and, was career in the military and, has always been active and fit. And he was just kind of like, I need to do something. So we looked at functional fitness. We looked at training. We looked at what CrossFit could do. And we looked at the things that he's done in the past. And when he started joining the program, after I want to say it was 7 months or so, we looked up and Vince had gained 15 pounds of muscle. And he's like, man, that's the first time that's happened in years. And it was so cool. And it's not that we have this, magic pill and I was Morpheus and said, you can blue pill or red pill it. But it's just that we looked back and we said, we've got to get him to a point where we are getting outside of the comfort zone. And so at first, when he started training with us, it was just getting into the rhythm of being in class, getting into the rhythm of lifting and moving some ways that maybe we hadn't before. And then slowly but surely, actually a little bit faster than slowly, but we just started to see that we could increase his dosage more and more. And so Vince would come to class and he'd look on the app and he would see his workout. And then sometimes I would even in person, in real time, adjust his workout and just say, hey, we're going to increase this, or we're going to go a little bit heavier. But it was just this constant checking in and seeing what he was logging and seeing that things from a RPE scale seemed simple. And so when we were looking at strength training days and when we were lifting, I would say, man, we really need to push with this guy. And we really need to make sure that we are creating an adaptation. So we need to get him outside of his comfort zone. And at first it was something he didn't enjoy. And it was something that because he's a pilot, it was like, hey, I can't be so sore that I can't fly a plane. It's like, I need to be able to do my job. And so it's this fine line between, do you want to go and run until your toenails fall off to be a great runner? Or do you want to run until you're uncomfortable and be uncomfortable and see some gains? So shout out Vince. Great job, dude. But I use that as just a very simple explanation that you aren't going to see change if we're constantly comfortable. So how do we get comfortable with being uncomfortable? I think the first would be looking at, I don't want to say I know. The first would be just reps. Rep it out. Rep it out. come to class more frequently, pick something that you need to commit to. Let's talk about it just in this situation here. If you're a member of our gym and you're saying, I'm wanting to be more comfortable with the workouts that I don't enjoy, or I'm wanting to be more comfortable with the movements that stress me out. Let's say for most of the people that we train, it's running or it's burpees, or I know there's a few of you that it's like box jumps and things like that. But let's talk about running, burpees, and let's talk about maybe lifting a little bit heavier than we were comfortable with. First thing is just reps. We don't need to avoid those days. So don't look on the app and say, oh my gosh, we're running on Tuesday, I'm going to train on Wednesday. I would just encourage you that if it's your normal training day and if it's in your schedule to train, come and train. You might find that after a few sessions where you've leaned into the thing that you didn't want to lean into, just the simple act of being familiar with it makes things better the next time, if that makes sense. You see an improvement. So an example of that would be, I had an athlete ask me, their Murph is coming up. We do a Memorial Day Murph. And he said, I want to do Murph this weekend, and then I want to do Murph again on Memorial Day to see if I improved. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, I think that if I did it this weekend and then I do it again on Memorial Day, I'll probably get, a few minutes faster. And I was like, yeah, you probably will. And he was like, well, you think I'll get fitter in that amount of time? And that's a loaded question, but simply, I don't think that it's a fitness issue. I feel very strongly that it's just a familiarity issue. You're taking the same test twice. So if we look at movements and we say, I want to get more comfortable with doing burpees, or I want to get more comfortable with running, go run a mile on Monday and then go run a mile on Wednesday. This is very likely that your Wednesday mile is going to be better than your Monday mile, not from a fitness standpoint, but just from a familiarity standpoint. You go into that first mile, let's say it's the first mile that you've ever ran, or the first mile you've ran in 10 years. You're going to go out not really sure how to pace it. You might pace it too hard. You might pace it too easy, but you're going to get a data point, and it's going to be an awesome data point to have. But then the second time you go, if you go on Wednesday to run that mile, you have a data point. You have this time frame that in your mind, you're like, oh, 9 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever it is. And you're like, that's the time to beat. So you start running and you're going to glance at your phone, glance at your watch, glance at whatever it may be as you're approaching this mile, and you're most likely going to improve even by a few seconds because you know the time to beat. It's the same thing with training with someone. So if we want to get better, to recap the first one, if we want to get better at being comfortable, being uncomfortable, reps. Reps, don't avoid it. Lean into it. The next thing that I would say is look at your mindset around training. Are you the person that you don't like to run because you don't run as well as other people around you? Are you worried that other people will compare you to someone else if they see you running? Or are you going to compare yourself? Or are you worried that for the very first time in the history of this gym, someone's going to make fun of you for how you perform? Like, those things just don't happen, right? And we're our biggest critics, and we oftentimes will say horrible things to ourselves that we would never say out loud or to someone else. And so a lot of the times it's an insecurity, or it's a mental block we have around doing a certain thing, or is it a fear of getting injured? So if your mindset around training is one of hesitancy or insecurity or fear, it's something to address. If we're avoiding squatting because you've had multiple ACL tears and you really don't want to revisit aggravating that knee, awesome. Like, let's have that conversation. Or if you're avoiding running because, you have some sort of issue with your hip or your low back every time you run, great. Let's have that conversation. But if you're avoiding running because it just makes you uncomfortable, or you don't like the way that it feels when you run, that's even better. Let's have that conversation. I tell the story sometimes that one time I was in here training, We used to have a power rack behind me, and in front of us we have kind of wall to wall windows, and we're right near downtown Garland. And I'm in here by myself on a Saturday, and I really did not want to be working out. And at the time, I was thinking about competing in weightlifting and was moving some weight. And I'm in here, and I'm repping out a lot of weight, y'all, like easily, hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Oof. But I'm in here back squatting, and I rack the weight, and I have the doors open, and I have the music blaring, and I just like drop the biggest F-bomb ever. And I'm like, I really don't want to be here. Squatting sucks, blah, 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 blah. And I just am going off, right? And no one's in here. I'm just venting to myself. I've already racked the bar. I go to take off my shoes, and I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm done. And I look out the window, and this old guy is wheeling by down the middle of the street. He's got no legs. He's in a self-propelled wheelchair, and he sees me, and he then starts wheeling up towards the gym door, and he peers in, and I'm sitting on the bench in front of the weights, and he's like, man, I miss being able to do that. And I'm just like, what the heck? And then he just wheels off. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, I'm over here crying about squatting and how much I hate it. And this dude with no legs, from the knee down, rucks up, and I wish I could do that, and then wheels away. And it became I don't have to squat, I get to squat. I don't have to come in and train, I get to come in and train. And I sat there for a moment, and I was like, well, I'm definitely finishing my squat session. And there was so much more gusto and so much more, energy than there was previously. But I tell you that to say that it radically changed my viewpoint when it came to training. And I used to avoid going on walks with my wife, not because I don't enjoy time with my wife, but I really did look at walks as just very boring. But I don't have to go on a walk. I get to go on a walk. There is going to be a time in my life where I will look at a 30-minute walk with envy. There's going to be a time in your life when you look at 21:15:9 of burpees and calories on the assault bike with envy. There's going to be a time in our lives when we are very jealous of the version of ourselves that got to come in and work out really hard and sweat and push themselves and challenge themselves and do all the things. And I really hope that time doesn't come faster than it needs to. I hope that time comes when it has to, and it comes naturally, and it comes after you've exhausted all efforts to put that off. Because if you think about it, there is someone in your life that has either passed away too soon or has lost function, whether it be cognitive or physical function. And those things can be traced to how they treated their bodies and how they viewed health and wellness. And the other amazing thing is, even if you're not where you want to be physically, and even if you're not where you want to be performance-wise in the gym or whatever it may be, you are a walking testimony for the people in your life. So why are you here? I don't know if there's one person at my gym, and I don't know if there's one person in the last 13 years that I talked to that truly was only here to look fine. Now, there's a lot of y'all that like, yeah, I want to look good. I want to look sexy. I want abs, all these things. But when we get down to the actual, like, why did you decide to get a coach? And why did you decide to stop doing, sauna sweat sessions and smoothies, and you actually wanted to do something a little bit harder and challenge yourself? And I'm really blanking to find anybody that answered anything different than, I know someone that didn't take care of themselves, whether it be a friend or a family member, or I have something or someone motivating me to want to be my healthiest and strongest for as long as possible. So yes, there are days when the workout sucks, and there are days when this is really hard, but it is so worth it to embrace that hard and lean into it and invest in you and the people around you. I'm Justin Estes. This was a rant and talk about doing hard things and why I love what we do, because we do not do easy stuff. We come in and challenge ourselves every time we're here. And I'm so appreciative of the constant reminder that you guys give me when you guys come into class. This is the Untitled Coaching. Ooh, not poaching. We're not poaching. This is the Untitled Coaching Podcast. And the title for today, maybe instead of Untitled, the title for today would be Hard Things Are Worth It.